In the northern Tigray highlands, the center of government was stable in Gondar until the beginning of the 13th century, when the Tigrayan Amharic struggle for control began. The Tigrayan nationalism could not return to power in Ethiopia, since the 13th century, only with the inauguration of Meles Zenawi in May 1991, after a bitter struggle against the totalitarian rule led by Mengistu Haile Mariam 1977–1991. During 1988, the Ethiopian fronts of struggle allied under the leadership of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, to unite efforts during the guerrilla war against the regular Ethiopian army, 1988–1991. Although the Oromia Liberation Front, OLF, was a key partner during the struggle phase, however, the escalation of tension between the leaders of the two fronts, Oromo and Tigrayan, prompted the Tigray Liberation Front to establish the Oromo People's Democratic Organization, OPDO, during 1989 and 1990, now the Oromo Democratic Party, ODP, as the increase in members during semi-free elections results in the control of the Tigrayan Front on the supreme policy of this coalition of the races of Ethiopia. Therefore, it was what Abiy Ahmed claimed to be a politics of democratization that made the Tigrayan leaders feel marginalized. Why the war in Ethiopia? The current Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, has been a member of the Oromo Democratic Party since 1991, loyal to the Tigris leadership in the Oromia region. Consequently, what happened was the disruption and dismantling of the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, EPRDF, with the merger of 8 other parties to establish the Prosperity Party in December 2019, and then the postponement of the elections due to the corona pandemic, with the marginalization of the roles of senior military leaders and politicians from the Tigray nationalism, all of which led to a feeling the leaders of the Tigrayan Front that Abiy Ahmed betrayed and reneged on his support for the Ethiopian federalism, which is at the head of its Tigrayan leadership, as he has been a member of the federal government since 2010. Subsequently, the Tigrayans ignited the furnace of war with the beginning of November 2020, and until now. On November 21, 2019, the ruling coalition unanimously approved the merger of 3 of the 4 ethnic parties into one national governing party before the 2020 elections, while the Tigray Party boycotted that meeting. Abiy Ahmed hoped that his quick reforms could give a chance to many Ethiopians who have been denied the vote for decades because of the glorification and mistreatment of the ruling coalition, which is controlled by the Tigray Front. During this, the difference in opinion of the Ethiopian community was clarified. While supporters expressed that the merger of several ethnic parties into one national party, whose goal is a united Ethiopian identity with a non-ethnic federation, is to enhance national unity through the inclusion of other ethnic parties. The ruling coalition saw them as inferior to electoral participation, because of their pastoral lifestyle. For example, while opponents saw that the population of Ethiopia reflects ethnicity, as they are about 115 million belonging to more than 80 nationalities, and therefore the imposition of a unified identity through a ruling political party is doomed to fail. As for the Tigray Party, which boycotted the vote, Getachew Reza, one of its leaders, declared that Abiy Ahmed did not consult the cadres of the coalition, nor did he follow the correct procedures in voting, and it is a deceptive process, referring to Abiy Ahmed's desire to monopolize power. Thus, it seemed that the Tigray leaders had no intention of relinquishing power. Then the war began in November 2020, as the Tigrays remembered their past in guerrilla warfare. Scorched earth policy. Despite Abiy Ahmed's claims not to target civilians, however, international reports on the humanitarian situation reflect the extent of the brutality of the conflict, as they indicate that boys over the age of 14 have been targeted for murder, and that rape has been used as a weapon by both sides of the conflict. Although the Tigray region was the target, the Benishangul Gumuz region in western Ethiopia, especially the city of Mekelle, not spared the attacks. The Amhara region was also attacked by Eritrean forces, where hundreds of civilians were executed and slaughtered and buried in mass graves in the city of Aksum. The survivors added that the residents of Aksum were in a state of shock at the soldiers' violence and looting. That war has resulted, so far, about the displacement of hundreds of thousands as refugees, either inside Ethiopia or towards Sudan, and tens of thousands lost their lives during the indiscriminate bombing, or by systematically starving the people, and preventing the arrival of humanitarian aid. The news also indicates that the Ethiopian government is targeting the arrest of people according to their Tigrayan nationality. Conflict scenarios. Both the Tigray Front and the military wing of the Oromia Front seek independence, which would constitute a real danger and fuel ethnic conflict, not only in Ethiopia, but in the region as a whole. If it happened, it threatens the stability of the political borders of neighboring countries. Despite the recent suspension of the federal constitution, Article 40 of it contradicts the third item of Article 39, which grants the Ethiopian nationalities the right to self-determination. This same federal constitution is what the Tigrayans are fighting for. As for the event that the Ethiopian government is able to regain control, which is the second scenario, it is not certain that democracy will be established. The current situation indicates the exacerbation of ethnic strife, which is likely to increase the marginalization of some non-cooperative nationalities. The possibilities of persecution of the Tigray nationalities in particular are also present, especially since the government's performance with regard to humanitarian aid illustrates the methodology of the persecution. As for the third scenario, and what the leaders of the counter-coalition referred to, it is possible that the Tigrayan leaders will repeat what they succeeded in during the overthrow of military fascism in 1991. Consequently, it is possible that Addis Ababa will fall, so that the political situation will be reconfigured on a federal basis that may not guarantee the interaction of all nationalities in the politics of their country. As for the fourth scenario, it is partially similar to the first. However, the situation will require the government of Abiy Ahmed to acquiesce in the principle of the status quo, as the crisis is settled by negotiating the survival of the Tigray Front's control over the strategic cities, in addition to granting them control of the Tigray region, a scenario similar to some extent the establishment of a state within a state. The fifth and final scenario also relates to the principle of negotiation. International pressure may push both parties to negotiations to settle the crisis peacefully. During this period, the Ethiopian constitution may be reactivated, with the idea of the Prosperity Party being put aside, and a return to the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Party, EPRDF, but with some modifications. Among the possibilities of accepting other Ethiopian nationalities that did not have a presence on the map of domestic politics before the crisis. Famine is on the way. In total, the deteriorating humanitarian and political crisis in Ethiopia, especially with the intransigence of the two parties to the conflict, despite the threat of economic sanctions, to the potential for an escalation of the crisis, which threatens at least 7 million people with starvation and insecurity. While at least 1 million people are now at risk of actual starvation with a severe lack of medical services, in view of the dangers to which humanitarian aid convoys in the Tigray region are exposed, as a result of mutual shelling between the two parties most of the time, in addition to the harassment they are exposed to by the Ethiopian government, and in some cases even killing. Thus, the situation predicts that the country will enter a dark tunnel in a conflict in which no one will win, and everyone will lose unless a scenario is found that achieves some gains for all parties and preserves the dignity of their races, in exchange for some concessions for the sake of unity and the return of stability to the country. In the northern Tigray highlands, the center of government was stable in Gondar until the beginning of the 13th century.